In LINQ, there are two more methods, that is first and FirstOrDefault. Either of these methods returns the first matching element based on the given condition. For example, in this first, we are writing the condition the location should be equal to Boston. Actually, with this condition, both of these objects are matching, right? But it will get only the first object which is matching with this condition. That is why it is named as first. Let me show the same practically. I just copy the previous example code, creating a new project. First example, pasting the same code. So we have the model class called employee, and in this program class, in the main method, we have a list of employees. Now I am writing the condition here. That is, I would like to get the managers from these employees. Generally, you can use the LINQ extension method called where in order to get the conditional data, right? But the problem with where is it returns multiple values as IEnumerable. See, for example, if you write where of employee equal to employee.job equal to manager, it returns the value in the form of IEnumerable of employee, which means there are one or more elements. It's like a collection. So you cannot print it directly by using the console or write line because it is like a collection. IEnumerable by default represents multiple elements. So you require to access the specific elements based on the index, either 0 or 1, whatever you want. Of course, directly you cannot apply the index against this IEnumerable type. First, you require to convert the same into list type by using the predefined method called toList. So it will convert the IEnumerable result into list of employee. So the result will be list of employee. Then we are able to use the index against the same. So this query returns only the manager's information. That means only these two objects as a list. So the first object index will be 0 and next object index will be 1. You can access the specific element based on the index. But what if I am interested in only the first matching element, but not all remaining? In that case, exactly, you can use the first method instead of where. See, in this example, I would like to get this first matching element, that is William details. But since we are using where, and since it returns the data in the form of IEnumerable, and eventually the same gets converted into list of employee by using this toList method, and since the list of employee represents multiple employees, you require to get the each element based on the index. You cannot get the same without indexing. So this is the problem with list. But let me rewrite the same code with first. In this case, instead of using where, I am using first. The benefit of the first method is that it by default gets the first matching element based on this given condition. So there is no need of using toList and no IEnumerable. Directly it returns the data in the form of employee type. And while printing the data, you can access the actual properties by using first manager.employee ID, employee name, etc. You need not use indexer here. And that is what the benefit of using first. See, check the data type of first. It is not IEnumerable, right? It is employee. But check the data type of where. It is IEnumerable of employee. So that makes a difference. When you want single element, first is best. When you want multiple elements in the result, where is best? But here the question is, what will it return exactly whenever no matching element is found with this condition? For example, I am trying to write the condition as job equal to clerk. With this condition, no element is matching, right? Actually, same condition will be checked with each object from the list. For the first time, EMP refers to the first object, and then the condition will be checked. And then the same EMP refers to the second object. One more time, the same condition will be checked. Like that, for each object from the list, the same condition will be checked. But with all these objects, we are getting false because job equal to clerk. This condition doesn't match with either of these values. So in this case, what employee object will it return? Let me check. See, we are getting invalid operation exception here. It says that sequence contains no matching element, which means at least there is no any one element that matches with this given condition. For all these elements, we are getting false with this condition. But anyhow, in the real world applications, this may be harmful for your application. For some reason, because of data changes, if no matching element is there, your application will crash because of the invalid operation exception. Because whenever runtime error occurs, the application will be abruptly terminated. So with maximum possibility, the developer has to avoid exceptions. That is why the solution for this problem is, instead of using first, try to use FirstOrDefault as alternative. So basically it works in the same way as it before. Whenever the data is found with this condition, it works in the same way just like first. See, we are getting the matching data in both cases. It has no much difference when the data is found. But whenever, unfortunately, no matching data is found with this condition, for example, job equal to clerk, this condition doesn't match with either of these elements in the list. So at that point of time, this FirstOrDefault will return a null value into this particular reference variable. Let me add the breakpoint here and run this code. Okay, all the above statements have been executed. We are just about to execute this FirstOrDefault statement. Let me press F11. So for the first time, the variable EMP refers to the first object, that is 101 Henry, and this condition returns false because the employee job equal to designer. It doesn't match with this value. I am pressing F11. Now EMP refers to the second object, that is 102 and Jack. Here, job equal to developer. It doesn't match with this condition. So here also it returns false, like this. Again, let me press F11. This time EMP refers to the third object. This time job equal to analyst. It doesn't match with this condition. It returns false. Again, I am pressing F11. That means step into. This time EMP refers to the fourth object. Here job equal to manager. So condition false. Again F11. This time EMP refers to the fifth object where job equal to manager. Again, condition is false. That's all. We have totally 5 objects, right? So with all the 5 objects, the condition was false. That is why overall it returns a value called null into this particular variable. See, finally that variable refers to null. So that is what the default nature of the FirstOrDefault. If no element is matching with the given condition, it returns null by default automatically. But whereas in the same situation, the first method returns invalid operation exception. So in order to avoid exception, FirstOrDefault is better than first. But alternatively, if we are sure that at least there is one matching element with that given condition, if we are 100% sure, in that case only first is okay to use. But if you are not sure and want to avoid exceptions, FirstOrDefault is always recommended than first. But there is another problem with this FirstOrDefault method. Since it returns null value whenever the condition is not matching with either of the objects in the list, you cannot directly access the corresponding properties such as employee ID or employee name. Because see, FirstOrDefault is null. That is why you cannot access any properties or method through the null reference variable. So you will get null reference exception. So whenever you are getting null reference exception, you require to understand that the reference variable refers to null, so you should not access the property or method through that. Before accessing either of the property or method through any reference variable, it is better to check whether it is not null. So I click on Stop Debugging button. Keyboard shortcut is Shift F5. Here, it is better to write the condition here. If that variable is not equal to null, then only we have to print that value. Otherwise, we have to just print a normal message, but we should not access the properties from that variable. So let's run this application. See, this is the output of first method as above, ignore that. But this is the output from FirstOrDefault. Since no matching element is found with this condition, with all the employees this condition returns false. Overall, this FirstOrDefault method returns null. So this variable is equal to null. And then we are checking. If that variable is not equal to null, then only we are printing that employee ID and name. Otherwise, we are printing this message. So we are getting this message because it is null. But alternatively, if you are giving a correct value, which does exist in the list, for example, developer. Now, in this case, we are as usual getting that data. This is the information of developer. So, FirstOrDefault is better for real-world use case because it avoids the exception. But the burden for you is you require to write if condition, checking whether it is not equal to null before accessing either of properties or methods from that variable. And this is the notes for the same. This is the basic syntax of first internally. The first method receives a parameter of func type, but we are passing a lambda expression for this func type of parameter. In the section of delegates itself, we have understood the predefined delegates such as func, action, etc. So this will get the first element. And similarly, we have FirstOrDefault. It has similar syntax. But when the condition doesn't match with either of these elements, it returns null. Okay, most similarly, we have one more pair of methods, that is last and LastOrDefault. I think you can guess and understand the purpose of last. But either way, we will understand that practically in the next lecture.